You wake up before the sun even rises. The light is still just a distant promise, hidden behind a horizon shrouded in thick mist. The cold penetrates through the thin wood and clay walls of your home, biting your skin like invisible teeth. The silence is almost absolute. There are no roosters crowing, no murmur of neighbors preparing for the day. Only the low, dry crackling of the dying fireplace, as if even the fire itself is tired. You smell it first. It is not the scent of fresh bread that sometimes came from the house next door, nor the hay stored in the barn. It is a heavy, bittersweet odor, mingled with something deeper, the smell of death. It seems to seep into your nostrils, clinging like damp dust. When you fully open your eyes, you realize that somehow this scent has already become part of the air, as if it is impossible for it to exist without it. Your mother, seated on an improvised bench, sews a piece of cloth, trying to turn an old sheet into something that can cover the windows. The fabric is rough and worn, but the intent is clear, to keep the world outside at bay. Your father is not there. He left early, before you woke, probably to fetch water from the communal well. A well that everyone now avoids, but that no one can truly do without. When you get up, the cold stone floor pierces your bare feet. You put on the same tunic you wore yesterday, and the day before, and probably the day before that as well. Clean clothes are a luxury for times that are not yours. The wood creaks under your weight as you approach the small window, a square hole covered with a piece of uneven glass. Outside, the fog hides much of the village, yet you can still make out the shapes of some houses, and in the distance a cart covered with dark cloth. Two men push it slowly along the muddy road. You know what that cart carries. Everyone knows. A bell tolls, slow, dragged, deep. It is not a call to mass, not a market announcement, not a wedding notice. It is a sound that for the past few months has come to mean only one thing. Someone has passed. The wind shifts, bringing a distant murmur, a prayer in Latin chanted in low voices. You recognize the melody, but the way it is sung today is different, more urgent, almost desperate. It is the song that precedes the burial. Your mother notices you watching through the window and comes closer, placing a firm hand on your shoulder. The touch is warm, but her gaze is cold, as if she wants you to understand without the need for words. Do not stare too long. In your village, some things must only be seen from the corner of your eye. You move away and sit at the table, where a bowl of thin broth waits. It steams, but the aroma is uninviting. It is made of roots, a handful of barley, and the remnants of salted meat, probably from days ago. With each spoonful, you taste the metallic bitterness of the spoon and realize how accustomed your body has become to hunger. The day drags on with heavy slowness. Outside, neighbors' footsteps are rare and hurried. Doors are slammed shut, windows bolted with improvised locks. In the air lingers the feeling that everyone is waiting for something inevitable. When the afternoon arrives, sunlight manages for a moment to pierce the fog. It is then that you see a procession approaching along the main street. 3 men in dark cloaks carry something wrapped in crude cloth. One wears a long curved mask resembling a bird's beak, with 2 round holes at eye level. You do not know exactly what is inside that mask, but you have heard whispers. Dried herbs, vinegar, even precious stones. Anything that could ward off the miasma that everyone believes carries the disease. People watch the procession only through cracks in their windows, as if merely witnessing it could bring bad luck. The bell tolls again, once, twice, 3 times. Each chime echoes among the houses, spreading through the fog as a warning no one is safe. At night, darkness falls almost abruptly. There are no candles lit in many homes, and the few that glow appear more fragile than ever. The entire village is enveloped in a strange silence, broken only by the distant cry of a child. You lie down, but sleep does not come. The smell of smoke mixes with the same bittersweet odor you noticed in the morning. Suddenly, a sharp sound. 3 heavy knocks on the door. Your mother freezes. Your father, who had just returned, holds a piece of wood like a club. The knocking repeats, louder this time. Outside, a hoarse voice calls your father's name. He approaches the door but does not open it. He only asks what happened. The answer is brief, almost whispered, but clear enough to chill your blood. It's the neighbor. He hasn't woken since dawn. Your mother closes her eyes and murmurs a prayer. Your father steps away from the door slowly, as if the mere act of opening a crack could invite misfortune inside. Outside, footsteps retreat, returning to the dirt path leading to the main street. You curl up in bed, listening to your family's quickened breathing. The wooden roof creaks, and the wind howls through the gaps in the house. Everything around you seems fragile, ephemeral. A part of you tries to believe it is just another illness, one that will pass like so many others. But deep down, you already feel it. Something far greater and darker is taking hold of your world. And when the bell tolls again, perhaps it will be for someone you love.
The air is heavy, not because of the weather, though the biting early autumn cold seeps through the gaps in your home, but because of something you still cannot explain. You wake before the church bell announces the first mass of the day. Outside, the silence is not the usual quiet of the early morning. It is a nervous, almost contained silence, as if the very earth itself is holding its breath. Your house is simple, made of wood and clay, with a straw-covered roof beginning to sag in the center. The floor is packed earth, cold beneath your bare feet. You smell the remnants of last night's fire still smoldering weakly in the corner, releasing a wisp of smoke that mingles with the bittersweet odor of something rotting, perhaps leftover fish the neighbor forgot to bury. You rise and, instinctively, look out the small window. The village is still asleep, but not peacefully. Doors are locked. Makeshift curtains of old fabric cover windows that would normally be open to let in the morning breeze. Even the dogs, which usually roam between the houses, seem to have vanished. In the distance, a thick fog blankets the stone path leading to the central square. You know that soon the bell's sound will break this silence, but this time you have the sense that it will not be calling for mass. You decide to step outside. The cold hits you like a blow. The air is dense, and each breath brings a metallic taste to your mouth. The narrow streets are coated in mud, the recent rains having turned the ground into an uneven, slippery field. Passing the old baker's house, you see something you do not want to believe. The door is ajar, and inside, the table where he prepared the bread is empty. The expected sound arrives. Dong, dong, dong. But it is not the small bell used for ordinary celebrations. It is the large, heavy bell that only tolls for serious occasions, wars, fires, or deaths. People begin to emerge slowly, wrapped in dark cloaks. Their faces are pale, some covered with veils or pieces of cloth. Some carry small pouches of herbs hanging around their necks to ward off bad air, they say. You merge into the small crowd, feeling the weight of unease in the air. When you reach the square, the scene is unlike anything you have ever seen. In the center, near the fountain, stands the priest, but not with his usual serene expression. His face is tense, and his voice, when he speaks, echoes almost shakily. He does not speak of poor harvests, deaths, or confessions. He speaks of something invisible, something that travels with the wind, something that has reached distant towns, and now, perhaps, is here. You hear murmurs around you, stories of entire villages where people fall ill and die within days, rumors that it began in the east, brought by traders, whispers that it is divine punishment, a sign of the end times. The word is not said directly yet, but you hear it whispered between two men behind you. Plague. The priest continues to speak, urging everyone to avoid strangers, to close their doors, and to trust in prayers. But as you observe the faces of your neighbors, you realize that faith, though present, is mixed with pure fear. You return home, feeling that something has changed. It is not just a cold autumn morning. It is the beginning of something greater, something that, though invisible, is already all around you. And as you lock the door, you realize that the village's silence will not end anytime soon.
The silence that blankets the village is not just fear, it is an anxious waiting, as if everyone is holding their breath for the confirmation of a premonition. And it does not take long to arrive. In the following days, the large bells toll more frequently, not to announce festivals, nor to call for mass, but to mark deaths. The priest remains in the square, reciting increasingly long prayers, but now, beside him, appear figures dressed in black, wearing strange beaked masks. They say inside them are herbs and vinegar to purify the air. You learn that they are plague doctors, sent from other regions, but they do not seem to bring relief. On the contrary, their presence is a constant reminder that danger is near. It is a year of poor harvests. Rain and cold have delayed planting, and the granaries are not as full as they should be. Since spring, rumors travel faster than wagons. Stories that in port cities like Marseille and Genoa, hundreds of bodies are thrown into the sea or stacked outside the walls. Rats infest warehouses and ships, and fleas carry something invisible and deadly. But for most, these are distant tales, until they are no longer distant. The village where you live is small, maybe 30 houses clustered around the church and the stone square. The streets are narrow and uneven, more mud than path. At the center, an ancient fountain runs cold water year-round, where women gather to fetch water and exchange news. Around it, the fields are cultivated collectively: wheat, barley, vegetables, and a little wine for important occasions. The church is the heart of the community. It is where you hear of God, but also of kings, wars, and taxes. Though the sovereign is far away, his decrees arrive via messengers, almost always accompanied by tax collectors. And the plague, they say, respects neither kings nor peasants. One thing everyone notices: trade has diminished. Travelers avoid the busy roads. Markets that once brought fabrics, salt, and spices now arrive with empty stalls. Merchants who risk coming cover their faces with vinegar-soaked cloths and do not linger. This is a heavy blow to any village, but worse for yours, which depends on exchanging what it grows for tools and medicine. Fear begins to change behavior.
Families avoid visiting neighbors. Children no longer run through the streets. Doors are closed even before sunset, and some burn incense or sprigs of rosemary inside to purify the air. Talk of weddings or baptisms has vanished. Only funerals remain. You begin to notice that the priest, though respected, no longer has sufficient answers. He insists that all is divine will and that penance may save. But deep down, people want to know how to survive. And in that search, improvised healers emerge, selling potions, anointing foreheads with aromatic oils, distributing charms against the invisible evil. The days grow grey, not just because of the weather. Each morning, the bell may announce a new loss. The death of a strong, healthy man yesterday, a child today. There is no pattern, no warning. Only fever, dark spots on the skin, and in a few days, the final silence. Still, life must continue. Fields must be tended, animals fed. It is a routine you follow with less enthusiasm, always glancing over your shoulder, fearing that any nearby cough could mark the beginning of the end. Trade with neighboring villages becomes rarer, and when it happens, exchanges are done at a distance. Sacks of grain left at an agreed point, coins left on the ground with no direct contact. Some even wash the coins in wine or dip them in vinegar before touching them. And gradually, you begin to notice something strange. More crosses marking doors, small marks of charcoal or red paint. They are signs indicating that there are sick inside or that no one remains alive. Houses marked so remain closed and no one approaches. In hushed conversations, you hear that the plague is not just a disease, it is also a rupture. It alters the order of the world. Cities lose half their inhabitants. Villages vanish from maps. Jobs and functions once performed by many are now done by few. And some say that when it is all over, nothing will be the same. Yet stubborn hope persists. Some claim that certain villages survived by isolating themselves completely, closing gates and refusing entry to outsiders. Others swear that constant use of certain herbs, like rue and lavender, keeps the plague away. Some believe that burning the clothes and belongings of the dead interrupts the contagion. But the truth is that no one knows for sure what works, and this uncertainty is perhaps the deadliest poison of all. Your village now exists in an unstable balance, maintaining the minimum routine while avoiding anything that could bring harm. The fields are still plowed, but with fewer hands at work. Gatherings in the square become rare. Even masses, once full, now have few faithful, and those who attend sit apart from one another. The nights are long. The wind passes through the cracks in the wood, carrying a silence that is not peace, but vigilance. You begin to dream of earlier times, when the greatest worry was a poor harvest or a harsh winter. And you wonder silently how much time remains before the plague crosses the invisible boundaries surrounding the village. And deep down, you already know. Perhaps it is already here.
You wake up even before the sun reaches the horizon. The cold penetrates through the wood and clay of your house, clinging to your skin as if to warn you that nothing will be easy today. Every morning seems identical, but you know that repetition brings no comfort. It is a routine marked by fear and invisible risk. When you get up, you smell the burned wood from the previous night. It is the same smell that fills every corner of the house, mixed with the acrid scent that hangs in the air. A combination of sweat, damp earth, and something indefinitely deadly that you cannot fully name yet, but everyone calls the plague. Your mother sits on an improvised bench, mending old fabrics. She does not speak, but her eyes say everything. The need to survive today is more urgent than any other concern. Breakfast is simple, almost ritualistic. Thin barley soup, roots, perhaps a bit of dried cheese. With each spoonful, you taste the harshness of time itself. Nothing is fresh, nothing is abundant, but it is enough to maintain the minimal energy required to face the day. The water from the fountain, once crystal clear and vital, now tastes of metal and earth, reminding you that even the most common elements can become hostile. Upon leaving the house, the village reveals itself as even quieter than before. Quick steps cross the dirt streets, but without contact, without greetings. Cloth or leather masks cover young and old faces, turning each person into a strange, cautious shadow. Every gesture is calculated to avoid risk. Approach is measured, voice is low, glances are quick. You absorb these silent rules, making them part of your own routine, aware that the plague does not discriminate and that any slip could be fatal. Work in the field starts early. Wheat, barley, vegetables. Every row is tended with care. Physical effort is accompanied by constant tension, the awareness that any contact with an infected person is an invisible threat ready to spread. Some neighbors help, but from a distance. Hand waves, whispered words, but no closeness. Every act of cooperation is calculated, turning daily life into a continuous exercise in caution. Animals still need care. You feed chickens, check on pigs and goats, making sure none die from neglect. The smell of manure mixes with the heavy air, reminding you that life still needs maintenance, even under constant threat. The fields become a microcosm of vigilance. Everything that breathes, moves, or grows must be protected with attention. Returning home, you pass the houses marked with crosses, signs of contamination or death. The village is fragmented between the living and the absent, between isolation and silence. Each mark is a silent lesson on invisible limits. Nothing is taken for granted, and every gesture is planned to maintain minimal safety. The afternoon is spent on household tasks, repairs, cooking meager rations, washing clothes, and careful hygiene. Herbs and potions are prepared. Nothing guarantees protection, but there is a resigned hope in every action. Every task is done with patience and fear, reminding you that even survival demands discipline. The gray sky seems to weigh over the village. No bird crosses the air, no stray animal is heard. Nature, like the villagers, is contained, almost suspended in fear. The wind blows, carrying aromas of mud, burned wood, and something indefinitely toxic that you cannot fully name yet, but everyone calls the plague. Your mother sits on an improvised bench, mending old fabrics. She does not speak, but her eyes say everything. The need to survive today is more urgent than any other concern. Human contact is measured. Young people exchange quick glances, words whispered from a distance, gestures of help without touching. Childhood dissolves into constant vigilance. Laughter disappears, replaced by the silent learning of survival. At night, the routine continues, preparing food, small prayers, hearing the bell echoing in the distance, reminding that death still walks silently through the streets. You lie down exhausted, but sleep comes slowly, interrupted by memories of sick neighbors, marked houses, and the funeral procession that passed before. Every heartbeat is a reminder of life's fragility, but also of the strength found in the discipline of each day. The plague has transformed the village into a set of invisible rules, distances, precautions, cleaning rituals that intertwine with daily routines. But it has also taught silent solidarity, patience, observation, and resilience. Fear shapes daily life, but does not completely destroy hope. And when night fully envelops the village,
You can still hear in the distance the murmur of prayers, the echo of the bell, and cautious footsteps. All of this is now part of life, a delicate balance between fear and survival, loss and resilience. You close your eyes knowing that tomorrow will be another day the same, but also different. The routine will persist, the danger will remain, and the village will continue living in a cycle of precautions, losses, and small victories. Each dawn is a reminder that even in times of invisible destruction, life insists on continuing.
The village awakens in silence, but you immediately notice that something has changed. The bell, which once tolled slowly to announce a death here and there, now strikes in a disordered, almost frantic rhythm. Each toll echoes across the thatched rooftops, cuts through the mist, and seems to reverberate inside your chest. You feel a different kind of chill. Not the wind, not the dampness of the ground, but something deeper, a premonition that makes you hesitate even before stepping outside. When you leave your house, the scene is terrifying. A house at the edge of the village stands completely isolated, surrounded by stakes marked with red crosses. Inside, an entire family succumbed to the disease in just 2 days. The air is thick with a smell you will never forget, a mix of fever, sweat, and something indefinably putrid. It is the first time you see death so close, so absolute, so indiscriminate. The priest tries to maintain some order, but his voice seems small against the horror spreading through the streets. He calls for help, but every neighbor is enveloped in fear and distrust. There is not enough courage to approach. Some carry sacks of aromatic herbs, others bring boiled water, but none of it offers real comfort. Death seems to ignore all precautions. You walk through the village streets, and every step is a cruel reminder of life's fragility. Houses at the edge of the village stand completely isolated, surrounded by stakes marked with red crosses. Inside, an entire family succumbed to the disease in just 2 days. The air is thick with a smell you will never forget, a mix of fever, sweat, and something indefinably putrid. It is the first time you see death so close, so absolute, so indiscriminate. The priest tries to maintain some order, but his voice seems small against the horror spreading through the streets. He calls for help, but every neighbor is enveloped in fear and distrust. There is not enough courage to approach. Some carry sacks of aromatic herbs, others bring boiled water, but none of it offers real comfort. Death seems to ignore all precautions. You walk through the village streets, and every step is a cruel reminder of life's fragility. Empty houses accumulate, and you notice that many families have already left, isolating themselves in distant places or simply disappearing. The children who remain in the village avoid any contact, their eyes wide and silent, as if they instinctively know that any approach could be fatal. Daily work has become a routine of extreme survival. You clean, cook, and tend to animals without touching one another directly. Every gesture is calculated, every word measured. Yet despite all precautions, the disease continues to advance, silent and relentless. Fear becomes a constant companion, and you realize that life, as you knew it, has disappeared. One day, the great event finally strikes you, personally. Your neighbor, someone with whom you shared long conversations and laughter for years, falls ill rapidly. Black spots appear on his skin, fever consumes him, and in just a few days he is gone. It is the first death that touches your life directly, and the sensation is overwhelming. You feel a mixture of grief, fear, and helplessness. The reality of the plague ceases to be abstract. It is now before your eyes, taking those you know and love. This event changes everything. The village reorganizes itself around survival. Families isolate even further, communication routes become minimal,
and routines are reduced to the essentials: food, water, hygiene, and constant observation of symptoms. Every dawn is an attempt to survive, every night a reminder of how many remain alive. You learn that life in these times is a series of difficult choices. Death is not selective, but every small decision, avoiding contact, washing hands, keeping distance, can mean the difference between life and the end. And yet the feeling of vulnerability is constant. Over time, you begin to reflect on what it means to live amid this destruction. Routine, once tedious, now becomes a ritual of resistance. Every meal prepared, every animal cared for, every object cleaned is a small act of survival. You learn to appreciate details that would have gone unnoticed before: the warmth of a meal, the firm touch of a wooden door, the sound of the wind through the trees. The village changes profoundly. The population diminishes drastically. Houses once filled with laughter are now empty. Children are rare, and the few survivors carry the invisible trauma of continual loss. Paradoxically, however, there is also a strengthened sense of community. Those who remain share experiences, create protection strategies, and care for one another, even from a distance. Months pass, and you realize that the plague has taught lessons that could not be learned otherwise. The importance of caution, discipline, and silent solidarity. Every human gesture assumes a new weight. Every word gains greater meaning. You understand on a deep level that life is fragile, but persistence in the face of adversity creates unexpected forms of strength and resilience. In the end, you realize something even deeper. The Black Death, despite all the destruction, also offers a chance for reflection. What does it mean to belong to a time and place where death lurks around every corner? What do we learn about ourselves when confronted with finitude so directly and cruelly? You survive, but you carry invisible scars, marks of the absence of friends, neighbors, and family. The streets remain silent, but the experience has left your mind alert, sensitive to what would have gone unnoticed before. Every dawn is a victory, every breath a reminder of the fragility of existence. Looking over the now empty and changed village, you feel a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. You survived, but the life you knew has vanished. The world around you continues, but not as before. And you wonder, had you been born in this time, would you have survived? And even surviving, what kind of life would be possible, marked by continuous loss and constant fear? The final reflection arises naturally. Every era of history has its own challenges and dangers. Some crises are invisible, others devastating. Some change us silently, others shape us by the force of survival. The Black Death in this European village taught harsh lessons about vulnerability, courage, and the silent resilience that only reveals itself in extreme times. You wonder whether modern life, with its comforts and technology, would truly prepare us for something like this. And in asking this question, you realize that every time period offers unique opportunities for learning, even in the darkest circumstances. The experience of the village during the plague is not merely a chapter of history. It is a mirror of the human condition, fragile yet tenacious, threatened yet capable of reinvention. And as the wind blows between the silent houses, carrying the distant smell of earth and burning wood, you realize that despite all the destruction, life persists. The routine continues, small victories endure, and within the silence of the village, there is something greater than fear. There is the persistence of human existence, stubborn and silent, even in the face of death. As you close your eyes, you take one final reflection. Were we born in the right time? Or does every era, even the cruelest, offer its own lessons, about life and survival.